Hi. Okay, it's been about 3 weeks, I think, and not the fastest pace of building, but quite a number of things achieved, and it is slow going. And in fact, you know, that's the one thing that boat building is very different from plastic model building. You know, if you were going to have delays on a plastic model project, you are going to take much longer on these boat projects. And that's one of the things that sort of is a bit of a wake-up call to me. So while this is supposed to be a pretty easy boat as boats go, you know, if you go and look through all of Artesania Latina's catalog, this, even though this is not a current listing, it's not available anymore, there's not much simpler. And when you look at it, you wouldn't have thought visually, you're not thinking that this has got tons of stuff, and yet it can slow you down immensely. I was briefly looking at the Marina 2 and the Carmen 2, C-A-R-M-E-N, Carmen 2, both very nice models, and quite a bit more complicated than this one, even though the hull is probably very similar. But the length of time to build those ships, so I'm not going to be delving into any new ships, so I'm just going to stick with my Escampavia Pilar as the next one. And then of course we have the trawler, the big scratchable trawler, and then my Victory. Okay, let's catch you up. These little rings which go on, they will go around this foremast, the foremast stanchion. That'll go through those rings, but there's also a little corner ring, a little corner ring, and a little corner ring. They are not the easiest to get on, and had I thought of that in advance, I wouldn't have ended my sewing. You see the way that is sort of, although it was folded double, the doubling stopped just short of the corner, which left me with a very weak corner. So I had to shift that little thing a bit in. Same with that. You can see that the absolute corner is just too weak. So that's a bit of a lesson learned. Now it's not a big deal because there's no stress on this. Once the little bracing cottons are in, just to hold the sail in position, you know, there's no stress and no movement. But I'm quite happy with that. So that one's done, that one's done. And as I said, I am going to put, this is the rear sail, I'm going to put, so I don't know if you can see those three little rings. There's the little ring at the top, there's that one. Not the easiest to get on, I'll tell you. It's all fine and well poking a little hole with your pin, but then trying to actually get this little tiny circle of brass through there, not the easiest at all. I'm going to let I'm not going to do this. I'm going to let that sail be out, so we'll have a little, you know, it'll be a little bit delicate out the back because that's sticking out. I've made all of these. So far 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you look at it at first, you don't actually even realize all of the places where there is a little rolled up piece of rope. So there's even a couple more that I need to make. If you wanted to, you go and pause that video on that point and you go and see if you can spot them all and count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, all of these little thin braces are painted and lightly weathered. This is the mizzen mast boom. So while I initially had not painted the little edges, I've now done that and browned them a little bit with a bit of extra, and I've browned the edge of that a bit So that mizzenmast sail, that's the rear sail, gets braced onto those little eyelets. This is done. I've only just painted the weathering on this base. So I built the base about a week back, painted it red. Now the interesting thing there is that's the same red, but it didn't come out the same because I decided to be clever. When I was putting on the weathering onto this, and you can see in there, in the grooves there at the bottom, you know, the weathering, it's not the nicest to weather onto a gloss surface. However, it came out very well. So I thought, no, I'm going to be clever with this one, and I'm going to just matte coat it first. The matte completely changed that red. So while this looks very good to my eyes, what I had to do was then, after the Humbrol matte, go and take a bit of acrylic red and brighten up the red again, and then weather that. So that I've just finished putting that. You can see some of it still a bit wet in there. Black and brown shadow and dirt effect into the base of that. That's got that little block on top. Also browned, because they supply those, you know, in this light wood color, pine color. So I'm quite happy with that. That is ready, and that goes here. And also not the easiest to sort of get that base correct, to get that base at the correct angle. So we hope that when I mount that, it actually is at the correct angle. Same with this one now. So this is done there. The foremast, so that weathering is done. That's ready to glue on. That has got the mast top on and painted, and I still need to mount the two lights. I painted that white and weathered it, and weathered a little bit more on the whole thing. So actually the mast, the various masts have had a whole lot more painting and weathering work than one would have expected, but it's good because it totally lends to the final effect of the thing. Now, having lights at the top there, and this is at the front of the boat, so this is there. As I did mention before, I can take wires down or I can take them across to the main mast. And I haven't quite decided. The wires that I've got are red and blue. I could use double blue, but and I could paint them as well, and they could run down here. I'm just a little bit hesitant to have something detracting from the visual appeal of the mast itself, and now you suddenly focus on those wires. Do I have any of that wire right here? No, I don't. So I'm still thinking about that. Now the actual lights which I was going to use, I want them to fit in here, even though this is not the actual kit item. And I was testing out a couple of LEDs, and that blue LED works very well. However, unfortunately, this is an aluminium light shade, which means if the two parts of the LED touch it, it shorts out. Even though aluminium isn't a high conductor, it's enough of a conductor to just short out the LED. So they need to get a little bit of insulating material, probably some Tamiya tape or something, just to stop that touching. And they need to get mounted onto a little side piece here. and somehow hide all the wiring. I mean that wiring, the legs of the LED itself. So it needs to be mounted into the block, be acceptable, be okay to connect wires to, but not really be visible. Not the easiest. Oh, here's the main mast. Almost forgot to show that. So that's got the blocks on it. That's those. It has got the tall mast on it, which I was going to make out of steel. That worked out very well. That little side piece, that's the same thing I need to do on the other mast for the lights. Has got a brace inside of that. It's not the strongest, but it's not the weakest, so it's good enough. Getting this T piece in there was a little bit of a challenge to get that correct, to get it all 90 and everything, and then weather that nicely. So that has come out pretty well. You'll notice that what I don't have on there, and I'm thinking of just completely leaving out at this stage, is these two rings, the radar rings. I tried to make, and I'm not sure how I got it right with this, with these two long ago, but I tried to make a couple, and it doesn't look good if it's not perfectly round, and I'm sort of okay with them not even being there. The masts actually look quite good without that. So that mast is finished except for the base, which needs to go at the bottom of this. And when I started actually doing the trials, I realized that this hole in the cabin was not correct, so I had to change that to be able to get it perfectly vertical, which now means that while my mast is correct, I've got a hole to fix there. So one problem solved, one new problem emerges. That broke off, had to re-glue that on. Then I started looking at this and noticed, and if I can point this out, I noticed that I had put two little connectors next to all of the lights. Now, while these ones are only static lights, I did it just in case I decided to change my mind, but I did leave it for these two, and I've now mounted LEDs in there. So while I originally thought that I didn't put wiring in, I actually did put wiring in for the nav lights and for the front lights. I just didn't install front lights. So they are in, and I can demo that to you. That came out pretty well. Okay, so we have got our main headlights, which are not even part of this model. They came off something else, and I just decided to put them in. And I think they're not perfectly aligned, but they're good enough. It's not like they're headlights on a car. Now, the weird thing is, if I reverse the polarity of this on the same circuit from what the headlights were working on, now that nav light can come on, but the other one is on very, very dimly. Now what's happening here is, and the reason why this is opposite is, I'll explain this now. Quite interesting and sort of a lesson in doing electrics. When I first built the cabin 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, the flat part of this roof and the curved part of the roof leave you with a gap of about 3 millimeters. So inside the cabin it's flat, on top it's round, and that's where your wiring is. So it's not visible from the top or the bottom, it's sealed wiring. I didn't know about resistors on LEDs at that point. I only knew about the wiring. So I wired up the nav lights and the main lights all onto the same circuit, positive and negative. So while I was busy installing these main lights, per chance I was testing them on using positive and negative. By the way, I had to drill holes through there because I hadn't noticed that my outlet for those wires was there. So I then got another set of wires coming out from inside there. So that gave me access to that. Should have done a bit more. So I tested my main lights, and then I got the connection, the polarity wrong one time, and one of the nav lights came on, but not the main lights. And then I changed these lights, and only the main lights came on, not the nav lights. And the reason for that is that the voltage is different on all of them, slightly, but enough. Whereas these two are obviously identical LEDs, and so they respond identically. If I change the polarity on one of the nav lights without any resistor in the circuit, the headlights draw all of the current, and the green nav light doesn't work at all, and the red one can come on very dimly. And because I don't have access to inside, I can't actually go and put on resistors to the individual LEDs. But that's what would have happened. That's what you'd need to happen to get that working. So it's okay. So while I can reverse the polarity just to show you that the nav lights can work, they're not going to be in use. But I'd previously said in a video that I hadn't done that. But then when I saw all of my connections, I slowly started realizing. So I had to drill open the back of those lights to allow those connections to come out. Again, it's metal. I had to put on, and in this case I used the vinyl tube from the motorbike models. I slid that over the LEDs. But when you solder, it does soften that. And that's not my best work. Not my best work there on that wiring, but I painted it black-brown to sort of blend in with the roof. So it's not a neat feature of it, but it's okay. At least we've got those lights. The four corner lights, because they come out especially just over nothing, if one wanted to actually use proper streetlight style, which you could from an HO train, you'd have to do a little bit of extras to have handled wiring at that stage, but I didn't take that into account or even decide to do that. At that stage it was just, can I even finish this boat? Okay, the rod, where did I put the rods? The rods have also got their cottons on. Now this end of the rod there, that pin, they brace into this bracket. So those brackets didn't have the holes properly drilled. One of them did, one didn't. And there was nothing to connect it to the cabin except gluing, which super glue just doesn't hold that well, and certainly not when you've got a rod with that much leverage. So I had to drill 3 holes and put in 3 pins, which you can just make out. 3 pins that go through the cabin and to the inside, and then they are soldered on the inside to all hold together. So that is now very strong. That can't break out, no matter how much force you put on there. The cabin will break before that thing breaks off. I had to re-glue the rod resting hooks at the correct angle, but that's on. When I was drilling that, because I think that's pewter as well, and pewter really is a terrible medium for having to work with. It's great for things like this where you don't need to do anything further with it, but if you need to actually work and drill, it's not good at all. So one of the pieces broke out because it's very, very brittle. It's that bottom piece there. You can see there's a piece broken out of it. But I positioned it at the angle such that when the rod rests, it'll push to the area there where there's most of that thing left. So it'll be okay. But not pleasant to actually drill out pewter pieces and stop the thing from breaking. Right, so I have got a single yellow cabin light on the inside, which dimly lights the crew. There's 2 crew in there. Captain and somebody else. There are 3 lights inside there. Is it 3? Yes, a green and 2 whites inside there, just for general lighting. I think one was blue actually. And then I've got the wiring that then goes through to those. And then there's the wiring that needs to go to this, the 2 lights on there. And I've decided I'm not going to put in a servo to, allow you to adjust different lights on, different lights off. I'm just going to get it wired up on a 9-volt battery, not on this 3-volt. So the 3-volt is handy for demonstrating. But it means I'm going to need to calculate different resistance values to the 4 different circuits so that all the lights can be on, last long on a 9-volt battery, just stay on completely. So the voltage that'll go to the various LEDs will still be close to 3 volts, but it'll be on a 9-volt battery. And that must all be well positioned inside there with a little switch, and you just switch it on, or maybe the switch must be even somewhere accessible from outside, so you don't need to take this cabin off. Last thing you want to do is, be messing around with the cabin and the rods. The rods are on here and everything, just to get access to your lights to switch them on and off. Now all of that wiring and testing and all of that takes quite a bit of time, and really I would have done a much better job if it was if I'd had that knowledge at the time. So that piece needs to go in there, and then the mast mounts onto there. But as I did say, that is useless because with the slightest force it'll come out. So I need to remake that in a longer piece. Cut off a piece of that, for instance, that goes right onto the inside there, and then brace that very strongly on the inside. Because the slightest bit of force on the mast or on manhandling this thing, and it'll be apart. Those are some of the things on the ship which they could have designed a whole lot better, and they sort of just leave up to the modeler to solve. So that remains. In fact, that's probably the next big thing to do, is get that get that right. When I was positioning the place where that mast goes on, I realized that that hole isn't even dead center across the width of the beam of the boat, and that one's okay. Oh, and I needed to do a bit of filing work. So actually there's a bit of, now I need to vacuum inside here, because now there's a bit of shavings. I'm not happy with the manner on which this fits onto there, which is basically just a slot in fit for a couple of millimeters sitting onto that little edge. In other words, once it's in position, it's sort of okay, but the lightest touch on the mast or something would just lift it out of there. But again, for the purposes of this model, it'll go for a few rides, and then it'll probably stay on the shelf. I'm not sure that I'll be taking it out that often. Depends. I haven't done anything more here. I still need to change radio, change receiver, put in the 4-channel receiver and get that active. And I haven't done anything on the rudder brace. So that's the two jobs coming up. And I'm still not keen to do any of the railing work until the entire hull is absolutely finished and doesn't need any more manhandling. There was something else. Oh, okay. On one of the videos, one person commented that, and this was where I was sort of speaking about the hull, about boat building and talking about the hull, which wasn't meant to be a, you know, a complete how-to video on the whole, because you can't do that in so few minutes, in half an hour or 15 to 20 minutes worth of video. So when I get to one of the other boats, I will give a bit more talk on the actual planking. I mean, that video of mine wasn't meant to be, you know, watch this video and you know how to build a boat hull. So that, you know, for those of you that are watching and sort of getting into boat building, as I have said before, I'm definitely not an expert at this. I did this one because I got it free. I had a light load on myself, in that if I completely mess it up, I haven't lost any of my own money. You know, as opposed to these boat models, which are actually a little bit expensive, and if you mess it up, you feel a bit bad about that. So this was one where I could practice, learn the skills without too much of a worry in that respect. But it came out a lot better than I thought. And in fact, right now with these masts especially, which this job of tapering and putting in the ladders had killed me for so long, you know, being so fearful of how would one achieve this correctly, and can we do it with the precision that I would have liked, as opposed to, you know, just in the end get it done. The tapering came out as well as I would, you know, if I did it 10 times more, this one would still be as good as any. The ladder, you can always improve every single time, but it's good enough. And so after that, there's not a whole lot. As I said, there's the railings, there's the tires, and there's fitting the rigging, the various little bits of rigging on the sail and on the derrick and so on. But that's all very quick. So we are getting towards the end. I'm not putting those strakes on. As I did say, I'm just leaving that off. So it doesn't matter if it's not the best sailing boat out there, you know, it doesn't keep its direction perfectly. Oh, there is one more thing that I keep forgetting. It's this it's this rear brace, but that's a very easy thing. So anyway, that's a catch up. We are getting there. It's not a whole lot left to do, but it isn't the fastest. So for instance, just organizing the LEDs and getting that wiring and getting a battery mount into there with a switch, you know, that's another week at least. Getting that sorted, probably not too big a deal. And it's far from an ideal situation on a boat build, but it is what it is, and we'll just live with that. And then once the radio gear is all correct and everything, we just need to do a little bit of a test and make sure we've got the weights and everything, and it's got the right stance in the water. So that's the catch up. Can't guarantee one next week, although actually what I might do is just talk about plastic models for a change again. With all of this, it's great that I'm getting it finished, that I'm getting close to done, because it's quite a draining project in a sense. I've got that yearning to get back to the plastics. So what I actually might do is make a video and just talk about plastic after this one, give us something to look forward to. The boat building and the wood building is a whole different mindset, and you sort of you feel that lack of the plastic model building. So let's talk about plastic models in another video.